Damos la más cordial bienvenida a nuestro conferencista, Rafael Lacoste. Rafael, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you guys. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Yeah, it's very strange here. I hope you hear me well. If you have any issues, please let me know. I will be sharing now my screen. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about first inspiration, and I think it's a bit weird to talk about a journey and inspiration through traveling when we are stuck at home all since this terrible pandemic. It affects a lot the way we see things, and I think we can travel more through our memories, and I really hope it's not going to last forever, and we'll find a solution very soon. So we can move on and we can come back to a normal life and travel again. So just talking about how you can envision world building, I think it's also a question of who you are and where you're coming from, the journey you've been through. Even if you didn't have the chance to travel a lot, the inspiration is not something that is falling from the sky. It's not a gift from the gods. It's really a question of who you are and what you like and what affects you. On my side, I was raised in Algeria, so the little fat boy is me with my mom on the sand dunes of the Sahara. I've been here a few years when I was very young, and I think you know, when you've been living in a place when you were very young, it can affect your perception of the world and what you like and what you want to do maybe later. And I know a couple of people like Ian McHugh, who is a good friend. He's from Scotland, and when he was young, he was living next an old shipyard, and I think, you know, all these rusty boats can, you know, be seen now in his own creations, and I think you know, the life you've been living and where you live can give you this first inspiration you have when you grow as an artist, and you shouldn't be afraid of keeping that and always, you know, try to connect with yourself, and this self-connection is really, I think, the best way of finding the first inspiration. Oh, these are my first sketches, my first drawings. So it basically says, oh, it's going to be really good. I don't know, that's a bit scary. Yeah, I was a bit of a spooky boy, maybe, I don't know. that's a bit special. But yeah, so that's the kind of sketch I was doing. Oh, I don't know why oops, sorry. I'm coming back to the presentation. It's just a technical problem for half a second. After the drawing and all this time period doing some illustration when I was very young, I joined the fine art school. And when I was in the fine arts, I studied photography and also video, and I learned a lot about you know, framing, digital, you know, touching photos, and also editing, video editing. And I think it's one of the first inspiration I had when I was 18 and 20 years old, being able to work on a setting through photography and lighting. And I think it's really interesting when, even if you work on a very technical and you know, CGI field and using digital tools, if you keep a connection with the traditional medias, I feel it's very important to stay connected to the traditional tools. This is why you can see here, I've been spending, you know, a lot of time taking photos and even working for a theater company as a, you know, stage designer. I was working on the set designs, and I was also taking photos of the actors and the actress. And I think it's for me it was a great human experience, because it's the first time I was working with people and not only working in front of the computer. And I think this is really good when you can work in this kind of conditions. But obviously, it was very hard to make a living out of you know, taking photos and working for the theater. It's the pizza is very small, and there's a lot of people with a lot of talent, and to have a piece of this pizza, it's very difficult. But it's, for me, great memories. looking at this picture, because I remember these days where I was, working with these people and, traveling and being really on stage and moving physically things around, lights, spotlights, and props. And I think this physical connection with the job is really interesting and enriching, and that's the first inspiration I had back in the time. So even if it's now a different kind of job that I'm doing, it's very virtual. It's really only, it's connected, and even more connected now since the pandemic, where we even work from home, and we've been working 6 months from home on shipping Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's very different from working with people, next to people on a set, and even more, when I was working on the theater industry. So what I did after the fine arts in photography, I tried to go to different schools in France. There was the famous school. It's a film actually school, and the other one is the National Art Decorative School. It's very prestigious school. And what happened, actually, I was rejected. I didn't get the chance to reach this school. And this is maybe a lesson I want to give you, because it's not because you're rejected from a school and you try to contest, you try to apply to a school, and then you get this kind of rejection letter. It could really affect yourself. But I think, you can become a good artist without, being at the best school, at the best, having the best teachers. It's really a question of you maintain your own passion and work a lot. It's a question of, personal interest and work a lot. And there are some schools that can really fit some people, some private school that can really, really be super efficient. But sometimes school like on a contest, that if you get rejected to a place, don't say, okay, I'm gonna stop being an artist forever. It's just a question of pursued interest and work. After being rejected to, in this, very prestigious school in Paris, in France, I got the chance to try a private school in Angoulême. It's what they have, the comic festival in France. It's pretty famous. And I was really lucky to have a teacher, very famous French comic and French anime movie director. His name is René Laloux. He's on the left, and he directed the Fantastic Planet, Gandahar. He directed also the Time Masters. And this movie really had a big impact when I was young, as a kid, and it was for me very impressive to be able to work and to learn a bit of his knowledge. On the right is Moebius, Jean Giraud, a pretty famous comic, also artist. The two guys passed away a few years ago, but they are still in my memories, and they're one of the biggest influence I had as an artist. So these are some shots from the movies they made together, the Time Masters. So if you get the chance to see this movie, it's a great movie. I don't know if some of you guys already saw this movie. It's called The Time Masters, Les Maîtres du Temps in French. It's a pretty amazing movie, and it's art directed by Jean Giraud, Moebius. So we're talking about inspiration. It's always look at the masters and the work of the masters. And when you get the chance to see these people, it's even more incredible. Sometimes you get so impressed that you can't really have a constructive discussion. But sometimes just by looking at their work and try to do something inspired by their work. And I think that it's better than looking at stuff online, people doing the same thing. I think it's interesting to come back to the roots and maybe more trying to connect more to the traditional paintings, the comics. Look at the masters and what they did, and I think that's the roots of the inspiration you can take. This is basically the student movie I did when I was at this private school called the Simbelia. It was the old Engine in France, and I did this animation movie that was screened at Animego and a few festivals, even at SIGGRAPH in 2000. It's a long time ago, but it was great. It's a personal thing. And in 2016, I made this book, Worlds. This book is, I would say, like the most recent personal stuff I did outside of Ubisoft. So it's an art book on my personal work. And a new one 2 years ago called Lines. which is a book of sketch, and which is, I think, interesting is that you can be learning things even if you're getting old. I don't mean like you're, I think, all young people, but sometimes we think, okay, I'm 20, I'm 25, I'm good, and I'm not going to learn new skills after I'm 40 or 50. But that's totally wrong, and I'm happy about that, because actually I came back to drawing maybe 7-8 years ago to traditional drawing, and it was so difficult. I was sketching really bad drawings, and I was like, okay, I'm really not at the level. And I was looking at the drawings of people like Spath or Ian McHugh, or even Franklin Booth, like the traditional painters, Gustave Doré, all these guys making incredible engravings. And I was like trying to challenge myself to do as good as they do. And of course, I couldn't reach this level, but it was just the challenge to try to reach this kind of quality and try to do something interesting. That was a way for me to practice and challenge myself. So even if I was 40, I could reach a better level. I could still learn it. So I was kind of reassured that even if you're aging, even if you're getting old, you can still learn and you can still get better at your stuff. So there's no age to learn. You can become an artist at 60 if you want. So these are like some of the sketch I did a few years ago. These are already like practice. I kind of improved my skills, and I was working on two different stuff, like using inspiration from photos I was taking, or also sketching stuff based on imagination, on pure imagination. So sometimes you would have image based on a place like Venice on the top left corner, and something pure imagination on the top right, and something from real life photo I was taking, Sao Paulo, on the bottom, on the left. So a lot of different studies, like the Erzkastel from Germany, trees, eventually stuff like that, same kind of exploration, and work, on, I would say, work on the hatching as well. The traditional drawing is something really interesting, because I feel it's like taking notes, and it's not like when you work with CG, with Photoshop, where all the tools are using your brain, and having the palette on the side and the different tools to do something is taking too much room, I think. And this is why I like to draw on paper with the pen, because it's just like, okay, taking a note and trying to understand the real world and understand your ideas. So I think it's a good connection to the mind, and I like, for this reason, I like to draw on paper. There's, after that, for sure, technical skills like working, hatching, working on composition, working on the silhouette, working on the contrast, and that's a mix of technical skills, but also observation, and see how things are working, and see if, okay, the image you're working is interesting or not interesting enough. Sometimes it's just details, like the rocks on the wall, the way the windows are crooked. It's not perfect. I like it because the windows are not aligned. They're working on organic ways. So when you're building a world, and when you're doing a concept art for a world building stage on a project, photography, I think it's very interesting, and documentation is very important, because if you want to make a credible world, even if it's very stylized, looking at image can really give you super nice ideas. If it's a fantasy world, sometimes check the reality, because reality can be more impressive than the fantasy sometimes. Sometimes people, because just they would ignore the reality of the world, they would maybe say, okay, I'm gonna make some spiky mountains, crazy spiky mountains like waves, and it's looking really cool. But then you look at the Baffin Island in northern Canada, and it's even more impressive and more epic. I would say even the same for a castle. Someone would make, I'm going to make an incredible spy castle with towers, and it's going to be incredible, and nobody has seen that before. And then you look at Bavaria in Germany, and there's something even more impressive that does exist. So I would say, in terms of pure design and concept art, on the world building phase, you need to do your homework. You need to look at a lot of documentation. You need to spend a lot of time studying, watching movies, looking at reference, know your shit, because sometimes you would get really surprised by the reality, and reality can really overcome the imagination sometimes. So this is why when I got the chance to travel, so a lot of my family is in France, and so when we get the chance to come back with the family in France to visit my mother, my father, and my sister, we do some hikes. We go on different places, and I was lucky enough to travel a lot in this country and taking a lot of photos. And these photos can be inspiration to build new things. And you know, you live also in a beautiful country. You have beautiful towns, beautiful village, amazing landscape. And I think before taking the inspiration from very far countries, maybe just getting this connection with your place and the place you like is giving you like your own personality, your own identity. And I think that's maybe where you first find the inspiration. So sometimes I would say, and or these are images from a trip we did in an island in Brittany. So yeah, these photos could just be, a pure like a photograph. I mean, you can frame it, you can use it as a single image, but sometimes you can take the photo and use that as inspiration for an illustration. And this is why when you get the chance to travel and take photos and take the time to take photos, sometimes you will get very good ideas and reference for your own palette and inspiration for wall building. And I think it's the base really for concept art. So I was lucky to go to Iceland and took a lot of photos there, and Norway as well. And we came back to Norway actually for the scanning trip of Valhalla the game. And this kind of landscape are like a huge inspiration for me. That's on a personal level. I love this Scandinavian landscape. I find them very impressive. And in this case, it's the color palette and the composition. I think photography for me is like a base inspiration for illustration. And you can see in this case, the color palette would give me an idea for an illustration. There's no connection, as you can see here in the composition, but the mood, the color palette, the blue gradient in the atmosphere, the color of the sky, the warm colors in the windows contrasting with the landscape was the inspiration for the mood of this image. So it's a photo I took, and you will ask me maybe, oh, if you use the photos from someone else, is it okay for a piece of art? I would say if the reference you use is not making like a high percentage of the quality of your image, it's okay. But if the photo you take on Google from someone else is making 80% of the job, then I would have a concern. I would say, okay, maybe you have a copyright issue. This is where you need to find the good balance. So for instance, you paint a castle, you make an environment design with a castle with some rooms, and you use photos from some people online, but you use just parts like windows, details, just to give a feel of scale. And it's not the actual composition of the image. I think it's fine, but there's always this tricky question of, am I okay to use this image? I don't know, maybe I'm stealing someone. So you need to think about this kind of process. That's also an illustration I based on the inspiration of some Scandinavian landscapes. You can see overhanging structures. I wanted to do something mixing an ancient world with an epic and very large natural landscape. That's an exploration also, but based on some photos and some trips. This is also on the same kind of vibe and same kind of universe. Wanted to make this kind of landscape, fantastical landscape, with the remains of huge craters and skeletons in the silhouette. So the landscape is not only pure erosion and terrain, but it's also the silhouette of gigantic skeletons. So that was a few years ago. This image is based on a trip I did in Skye. It's an island in Scotland. I went there with Ian McHugh, and we did a hike there. He actually stopped near this rock. He really felt vertigo, so he had to stop, but I did continue. And it's a transformation of this inspiration and of this trip. I really liked this trip. It was very nice. very otherworldly. We feel like really in a different place, in a different world. And so I took a few photos there, and it's a mix of the inspiration from the photos and the color and the mood I wanted to create. And for that, I would say it's only purely paint. It's only a digital painting. There's no texture, no photos. I did the test also with no opacity on the brush, so it's purely, assuming the color directly on the canvas. So you don't have room for polishing with opacity. So it was a good exercise as well. This one is another exploration. It's more matte painting technique. So I had some 3D elements using some photos as well. And I wanted to make this kind of moment where you discover the god of the forest, Serenos. It's Gallic god living in the forest in Europe. And yeah, I wanted to do something with the druids and this impressive deer in the landscape. So that was an interesting exploration, and I played with the scale. It was a nice challenge also to have this human reference and the little stairs around here. It's a very different technique than the one I used in this example, but I think it's interesting to explore different techniques, and always it's the the ending result that is important. It's not the way you do it. So I have a background in matte painting. And that's why I've been doing, very realistic image using some 3D, a bit more technical. And I'm also wanting to do more painting and digital painting and concept art that has to be very quick. And because also I'm doing art direction and I have a lot of meetings, I don't have a lot of time at my desk. And when I can draw, I don't have days and weeks. I just have a few hours. So that's why I try to learn how to be quick and efficient, and like using the lasso tool, for instance, flat colors, using quick color palette and composition. So that's why I'm both versatile in different techniques. And when I was working for the film industry, I've been working on a few establishing shots like this. This is a concept art for the Center of the Earth in Journey to the Center of the Earth. It's a movie. It's not an incredible movie, but there's some interesting and cool VFX shots. This is for the Center of the Earth. So it was quite a big mandate. I had to define the look of the Center of the Earth. And I was quite new in the film industry when I did that. So it was a great opportunity, but also a great challenge. I've been working as well on the Jupiter Ascending film on the early stage of conception. It was a long time ago. And it was also interesting to see how we can bring the castle and the visual direction of this film through concept arts using different techniques. And they were looking at different way of creating the world, like a 3D, so also some illustration based on concept arts. And I did a few sci-fi illustrations like this. So basically using different techniques like photography and 3D and playing with the perspective and all this stuff. Here also it's a shot of the movie, Jupiter Ascending, and I had a few different directions. So I had this direction going from trying something that is very organic to something that is pure, like this, very geometrical and very, very simple. So this one was not picked by the director. Actually, this is the one that they chose for the movie, but I did this version that I kind of prefer because I think it's more pure, more simple. There's a lot of 3D elements, the lighting on the 3D. You see the prism, the lighting reacting on the glass. I think it's more interesting because it's very pure, but this is when you work with visual directors and you have to always adapt to what they ask for. So in terms of world building, it was not fitting with the visual direction of the movie. So when you're not art directing yourself, you have to apply the requests of the visual direction of the project. So that's why they wanted something a bit more busy and a bit more organic and almost fractal. So that was for the Jupiter Ascending movie. In this case, it's a personal, I'm going back to this image. It's a personal exploration. I really like sci-fi and exploration of sci-fi concept arts. Obviously, we're not making many of these at Ubisoft, so it's also cool, I think, as an artist, when you have some time and when you want to take some time for yourself to do the stuff you want to explore. If you're not doing that at work, it's okay, because maybe you don't want to do everything at work and you want to keep something for yourself. And it's also like, you have your private life, but you have also your private creativity. And even if you show the stuff you create for yourself, I think it's fine that you're not doing exactly always the same stuff you do at work. I'm working on historical games. I really like, working on different eras, different kind of historical periods, different kind of cultures, landscape. I'm learning a lot on, the Vikings and the ancient Egypt, and also, the Dark Ages of England. All this stuff is really cool. But I also like space opera, and I want to make huge ships, and this kind of stuff with, colorful planets. And this is something I want to explore for myself. So I think it's great when you can take also the time to do a lot of exploration and, explore a lot of different options of world building at home for yourself on personal, personal basis for personal projects. I think it's very important to be able to do that as well. This is a mix of a landscape I saw in Quebec. I know it's very close to Simon-Stadenhag, but I like also this kind of northern landscapes, and we have that actually in Quebec. We have this kind of winter light with a lot of snow. I love the roads and the way the light can hit the road and the cars with the colors and the warm lights coming from the house. That's something we see a lot in Canada, in Quebec, and I wanted to have this sci-fi also presence in this case. This is also an exploration. Every single image has a little story, and I like this one because I did this one for my daughter. When I did this image, I think she was 8 or 9 years old, and she really wanted to have a landscape of a magical forest with giant mushrooms. And it was like, oh yes, that's a beautiful idea. Let's do that. And at first, when I started, it was like just simple sketches of, gentle and nice small mushrooms, and then it ended as a epic matte painting. And that's a funny story, because you always keep with who you are and what is the kind of inspiration you have. And I have a background in matte painting, and I can't make things simple and cute. It has to be epic and big. So I'm taking even like a realistic execution. So yeah, that's a bit of the funny story for this one. But I really like this kind of world exploration of, really fantastical worlds. And sometimes the inspiration can come from reading. And in this case, it's making a book cover. I really like also working on book covers, because you get a text, and from the text, you can build a world, you can build an image. So that's something I like when I'm working with an art director, an editor, and we have to do the cover of a book. It's interesting to have this storytelling coming from the reading and try to create a vision of the stories in one single image that will be the cover. So I really like that. So that was for the System Champions. It's a sci-fi novel. Now, if you want to talk about composition a bit and the process of composition, I think it's very important in world building, and it's applying for style as well, but also even for realistic worlds. And I remember a few years ago, I had to give some feedback on games we were making at Ubisoft, and sometimes I was just trying to filtrate the image, the 3D renders that were working like really good with a lot of details and nice lighting. But as soon as I was simplifying the image and making the image black and white, what I saw, it was like usually very boring composition. And it's a pretty simple thing. Sometimes you need to really pay attention to the way you bring the scale and the contrast in the image. And there's a lot of opportunities I had to give portfolio reviews during events like IAMAG or CTNX and even the THU a few years ago. And very often what I see is a quite poor composition when we talk about world design. with a lot of interesting details and very nice technical execution. But the problem is the composition is not super interesting and attractive. So it's always thinking about how can I bring, you know, a landmark, maybe visually a landmark in the image, play with overhangs and contrast, not only in the atmosphere, but contrast also in the shape and in the visual language of the image. In this case, also, you can see a different kind of expression. This is more sci-fi maybe, but you see how we can play with different contrasts and scale, and how we can bring depth with the openings and the play with the negative space and the different layers. So try, you know, always to think about shape at the, you know, first stage. When you have the shape, when you get right the shapes, then you can add details. But very often, what I see, the first mistake we make when we are a bit junior in this industry, people tend to put the details before the shape and the composition, which is like a kind of a beginner mistake. Also, watching photos, I think, is a great source of inspiration. And in this case, I love the art of Bernice Abbott. She made a lot of photos, black and white photos, in the 1920s and 1930s in New York. And I think it's a very good inspiration even for storytelling and world building, because it shows how we can play with the contrast. So in this case, you can see verticality, the light coming from one very simple edge, and this is contrasting a lot with this open vista like this. So when you're designing a world also for a game, I think it's very important to play with the contrast. And if you know the evolution maybe of your character in the environment, and you can always think about this kind of contrast, you will get a very rich experience. I have in this case, you know, verticality to horizontality. It's a nice contrast. Also, it's a nice way to bring different oppositions and creating a kind of rhythm in your world. So that's, you know, it could apply to different kind of adjective, like something that is upshot, downshot, but also open versus closed, a small space versus a huge space, a very dense location versus scattered elements in the location. You can have a very quick, you know, way efficient of making contrast between something that is very organic and something that is very structured, a crowded place to an empty place, direct to clean, dark to glowing, and luminous and colorful to monochromatic. So all these oppositions are interesting, not only in one single image, but also if you make a world, you create maybe a map, a level for a game, always thinking about how you can bring this kind of moments. And as soon as you have interesting oppositions and contrasts, then the player will get always interested and will always feel curious and about discovering new place and new things. So that's why it's very important to work with all these feel of change. And the feel of change is really bringing the environment design to the next level. And I think when you design games, it's very important to pay attention to the feel of change. This is what we apply also in Valhalla in the game. I was not, you know, meant to talk about that, but just as an example, we have England, and we decided to have all the different seasons in England, even if it's static seasons. It really helps the player to memorize where he's going, and also the narrative arc will be really like the input of this kind of moments and color palette and mood. So you have a mission, it's during fall, another one is during early winter. And so we can remember, depending on the place you are, where you were, and also you can have this kind of mental map of the place. So that's pretty interesting. So now let's check some of my process. I'm using also sometimes to be very efficient and quick some shapes. And so this image can be made in maybe 2 hours. I don't have much time, so what I'm doing is that I'm using different Photoshop shapes I've been creating, and using some of my photos, for instance, and some selections to, you know, help my work to be quick, efficient, and to make a lot of different explorations. So you can see here 2 different images using exactly the same tools and the same brushes and shapes. In this case, you can see here it's a medieval setting, but I'm using 2 different kind of brushes. I have this silhouette brush, helping just to create the composition of the image, and then I have different brush to apply, in the other case, the lighting and the shading of the volumes. It's the same for this case. So you have the silhouette of the buildings, you have the atmospheric depth, and then I'm using a texture shape to apply the shading on the side and the reflection. And it's pretty efficient. In this case, you will see how I do a sketch. It's very messy, as you can see. First, working on defining the composition, quick ideas. As you can see on the left, I have already my color palette, and I want to use this kind of values in the painting. So after the sketch, I'm using the selection tool on different layers to block the values and block the contrast to make sure that we have a nice, atmosphere, but also we have different layers of composition. And I'm doing all this by selection, and before it was just a sketch. And you will see it's all crafted with the selection tool. And after that, when I get rid of the drawing, I will use some brushes I made to do the shading and apply the light direction on the silhouettes. So this is for sure, like it's fast forward. It's not the real time play. So you see, I'm starting to work with the shading, adding some color variations. So just you can see the process. I'm not going through all the process video because we don't have all the time for this, but you can see how it works. And after that, using the brush, I will add some details. And you can see also here on the side of the building here, using some brush to do the shading and painting also the shading with the light direction. So it's a mix of using the right tools and also knowing where you want to focus. You want to focus more on the composition, the light direction. You don't want to lose time in details. What is important is really the idea and the problem solving. And this is really key in concept art and in world building. It's a problem solving. It's not only making an amazing looking image you want to display on your portfolio. Yes, you have to be proud of your stuff, but it's not only to show off. It's also because when you're working as a concept artist and illustrator for a game or for a different kind of project, you want to make sure you help the team. And when you help the team, you're basically the problem solver of the team. And that's what is concept art. It's problem solving. It's not making beautiful marketing image. For sure, you can make amazing image and you can use that to inspire the team. But most of the time, it's how can I bring to life a castle that will be, for a game, for instance, a way to attract the player and to lead him through a quest where we will have a boss fight, and I want this location to stand out from the other ones. And it's also inspired by the character of someone who is living there, and he loves this kind of colors, and he has this kind of inspiration. He went on this kind of trip, so we can find some trophies of his journeys, and these kind of things are very important. And this is why I'm talking about problem solving. It has to be linked to a lot of different elements and to help the team mainly. So you can see here, it's an example of the process. It's really, really fast forward, but you see the silhouette is very important. And then what I'm doing is that applying textures, shapes, using the brushes, but the small details are coming at the very end. And the small details are just here to give your idea of the light direction and the feel of scale. But as you see in the process, it has to be quick, and you don't want to spend too much time describing, your image. This is the same for this image. It looks very detailed, very rich. I would say it's more like a matte painting. So you can be doing a matte painting to give very precise idea of what you want, very precise idea of what is the world you want to create, but you can also make quick sketch to do more problem solving. And in this case, I will go quickly on this one just to show you the process. So making a few thumbnails to explore different options of composition. And when I'm happy with one idea of composition, I will take the thumbnail I want to bring that to the next level. But it was starting with a very small, simple, and quick image before being a very detailed matte painting. So the one on the bottom, on the left, was the one I picked to start working. And you will see here, you know, I'm doing this very quick 3D scene to get the perspective right. And as soon as you have the perspective, you can walk without, you know, stressing out with the direction of the lines, because you have 3D tool. You don't need to model everything in detail. It's just to give you the idea of the vanishing point and the way you should apply the textures and how you should draw. So I like 3D. It's a very good way to have your base to start something. And after that, after having the 3D, I will just extract the wireframe in Photoshop and start to draw the sketch and draw the lines, the different layers. And the different layers will be always following the, you know, vanishing points of the 3D. And after having the base of the shape, as I was showing you, I use the stamp and some brush I've been creating to add complex silhouettes to the buildings I was just trying to do with selections. So the silhouette is getting very detailed and the field of scale is better just by using these shapes and brushes. And when I have the silhouette I like, I'm filling these very large shapes with textures. And these textures will give life to the buildings. As you can see, the lights also. I like the twilight, this moment where it's not the sun yet. It's just before the night or just before sunrise, where you can really have the ambience, the atmosphere, and it's pretty mysterious, and you can play a lot with atmosphere and fog. And you have also all these local lights coming, giving some other light directions. Oops, sorry. And yeah, you can see here it's getting more detailed as I apply the different textures. I just want to fast forward to show you the last touches here. You can see the details, the lighting. So I'm not painting everything. It's more like the job you will be doing when you're doing a matte painting, when you're using 3D textures, photos, but it can be all designed by yourself. It's all based on a very simple shape. Even if you have the final image that is very detailed, very rich, the beginning, as you remember, was just a black and white composition and just simple selections like this. So as you can see, it's a question of technique, but it's also mainly a question of ideas and exploration. And I would say there's no only one technique. There's a few ways to reach your goals, but I think it's pretty important to always keep an idea that when you're making an image, you're helping, giving inspiration and solving problems. And that's not only to make a beautiful image, it has to be connected to something and what you want to bring to life. The same here, from very simple shapes to the final image. And in this case as well, pure contrast to the final image with the details and the lighting. This is what I did for Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and I think we don't have much time left, but you will tell me, Guillermo, if we're taking too much time. But before the questions, I mean, and you can here you can see that there's this intention of having the pier, the bridge, the big landmark in the distance, placing all the different elements for the composition, but it's very sketchy, very simple. But all the ideas are already here. You know, you can see the stilts, the pier, you can see the boats in the distance, you can see the dome. It's already there, everything is there, but it's just a first intention of the concept, but everything is important and it's there. And then the final image is highly detailed, rendered. I've been using photos, reference, I've been using 3D elements. I spent a long time on this image, maybe almost 4 days, I don't know, maybe 3-4 days. But the first intention is really there on a simple sketch. And sometimes you can keep that as the main way of fixing the problems. Sometimes you will have just 2-3 hours to do an illustration or concept, or maybe half a day. And this could be enough to help a level designer, a level artist to give inspiration to a team making an animation movie. Maybe that's enough. But for me, it was not enough. So I wanted to bring that to the next level because I didn't have much time to do the production. So I wanted to make one image that could inspire the whole team and give in one single image, maybe the visual direction to a big area of the game. So that's why instead of making multi sketches in many angles, I chose to make one image that could really help the team and give inspiration to a lot of people. So these are like all these black and white sketch. You know, you can start with a sketch on paper, sketch on toilet paper, sketch on I don't know, napkin. But the idea is what is important. It's the note you have, the idea you have in your head, and you want to explore. And the sketch can become a digital painting. You know, taking the composition and the idea, the first idea, to a next level with the different levels of composition, and using photos as inspiration for color palette, for mood, and bring that to a next level. But you can see here, it's really starting with a simple drawing, a thumbnail. I'm working on black and white, making sure that I have interesting composition and a nice atmosphere. And then using different textures and photos, I will take that to the next level, to this kind of detail and richness we want to feel. And this is how you can build a world. You can really start with simple ideas on paper, simple thumbnails, and then maybe using different tools to give life to something that is very rich visually, but and can also inspire a lot of people in your team. I don't know, Guillermo, do we have more time, or should we switch to the question time?
I think we should switch to questions now.
Yeah, excellent.
Awesome.
Excellent, no problem.
Thank you very much for your talk. It was fantastic.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Agradecemos a Rafael Lacoste por su interesante conferencia. En este momento comenzaremos con la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Les agradecemos hacer uso del chat habilitado en esta sesión de Zoom para realizar sus preguntas. Okay, so, no surprise here from the first question. What would you say is the most challenging part of working on games such as Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Odyssey?
The challenging part of working on games like this is it's a big world. It's a huge game. So making sure that the game is interesting in terms of visual direction is the big challenge we have. We don't work on a corridor game. We don't work on something that is really in control for the composition all the time. It's an open world, so you can go anywhere, and you can see multiple angles. So making sure it's interesting and beautiful and varied enough for the player is, I would say, the biggest challenge.
Thank you. From Valeria Perez, which has been the project that you have enjoyed working on the most?
So yeah, good question. It's a difficult choice. I would say for different reasons. I really love working on Black Flag. It's you know, the setting, you know, in the Caribbean was super interesting, super cool. And I would say also the lighting was really fresh, and it was very different from what we did before. And I really love the naval battles and the jungles. It was cool.
Thank you. Here's two questions that are kind of similar. What is your best advice for someone who wants to start in the concept art field? And any tips for amateur or student artists?
I would say for sure it depends if you want to join a big game company or a small one. I would say if you join a small company, you can be very versatile. You can do a lot of different stuff. And I think it's cool when some people like to do characters, and also environments, and maybe also some UI. They want to explore a lot of different graphical exploration, but it's maybe better for this company and maybe indie game. If you want to join a big IP game, a big AAA, in a big company, it's more difficult. Then you need to be more specialized. So if you want to join for instance, Ubisoft, I would say, okay, you need to know if you want to be a character designer or environment artist or a props designer. It's not the same kind of job. An UI designer, it's not the same job at all, because it's a big scope. So you have to be really specialized. And for sure, you have to be very good at what you're doing. So if you say, oh, I love characters, and I see your portfolio, and you've been doing some environments, and the environment look better than the concept of the characters, I think, okay, maybe you need to think differently, and maybe you're better at focusing on environment design. It's this kind of stuff.
Thank you. From Damian Fernandez, how often do you get frustrated due to the lack of inspiration, and how do you overcome it?
We all get frustration. It's it happens, to everyone. I would say it happens to people, to writers. When they have to write, they need to write stories, for instance, and it's for a job, and you have to write a story for a game or for a film. You will look for inspiration. Sometimes you get frustrated because you don't find the good ideas. And I think it's the same, when you design a world for a game. Sometimes you have the blank page syndrome, like this kind of stress being in front of a blank page, and it can be stressful. Every time when I do a painting, and especially when I'm using maybe pen and paper or maybe Procreate, and I don't have the tools I really master, like Photoshop or 3D Studio Max, I don't have the the protection nest. So in this case, I would say it gets always frustrating at the beginning, and then we manage with time. And I think it's a question of motivation and personal interest, and keep faith.
Thank you. This one I think it's very interesting. What advice would you give to a younger yourself?
Oh, to younger myself, I would say to believe in yourself, because if you're young, you unless you're very confident. Usually, young people and young artists are not very confident, and when we get some experience, I think when we are too confident, it's not a good thing. But when we're not confident enough, it's also a way of getting an ambush. It's a handicap also. So I think it's I would say to the younger myself, would say, like, trust in yourself and work and keep your interest in doing things, because some people will say you bad things just because they are jealous, and it will affect you, and you will think you're not good. But sometimes people say bad things just because they're jealous. And when someone is saying something very harsh and difficult to you, but it's a good intention, it will help you to grow and be better.
Thank you. I think we have time for at least one or two more questions. This one comes from Angel Heredia. What is the most difficult thing about working for a big company such as Ubisoft? Do you feel your creativity is cut short by your superiors? That's a tricky one.
That's a tricky one. I would say it really okay. So one good thing, and I will be very honest with you guys. It really depends on the project you're on. Sometimes you will be on one small or big project where some people can be toxic and some people can be inspiring. And there's always a balance to find. And sometimes you get frustrated, and it's normal. There's no it's not like flying like a unicorn on rainbows. We always have like moments where it's frustrating. And I think the frustration can be also a kind of motivation, because you have to fight for your ideas. But it's also difficult, for the moral. But yes, sometimes I get frustrated. That's for sure, and it's normal. And sometimes I get in a mood where I have a very good connection with my colleagues. Good thing about working on different projects is that you do one, it's finished, and then you have a new one, and sometimes one is better than the other. It's not like you're not like stuck in a situation where you're always with the situation that is difficult. It's changing, and there's way to overcome the difficulties.
Okay, thank you. And then last question. Well, this is kind of like a mix of several questions, and this is kind of like the last one. They're asking like, how much time do you spend on each piece of artwork, and how does that change from artwork to artwork?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the time you spend on one image is not the quality of aspect of the image. I don't know if I say it well. It's like it's not because you spent 2 hours on one image or a week on one image that spending a week will make a better image. So sometimes I will take a very short time and the image looks terrible, and I will stop working on it. Sometimes I will spend a week on one image and it's not looking great. And on the other hand, I would have maybe 2 hours on one image that will look great. And it's I would say like there's no like precise recipe. I think it's more a question of having, the right, working on the right things, being, connected with yourself, good inspiration. And I would say like in just to finish on this point, I would think maybe the reflection and maybe the thinking part is more important than the execution. So thinking about what you want to do for a long time, take notes, do some quick sketches. And if you take the time, because in my case, I don't have much time to draw. So I will have the time to have these ideas in my mind for a long time. And as soon as I have like a full weekend to be able to draw, when my kids are actually grown-up kids, so they can play video games or, talk with the friends on Instagram, stuff like that. So I can take the time to draw. But sometimes I will think about one image for 2 weeks, and when I have a window to put myself, on the drawing table, I would really focus on what I want. And this is usually successful when I had all this time of reflection.